Introduction. This book explores the concept of the shadow self, an idea introduced by Carl Jung. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we hide or suppress, often because they don't fit the image we want to present to the world. These aspects remain buried in our unconscious mind, but influence our behavior, emotions, and decisions in subtle but powerful ways. The book emphasizes the importance of shadow work, which involves bringing these hidden aspects into conscious awareness. By doing so, we can confront and integrate them into our lives, leading to a greater sense of balance and understanding. The introduction explains that this process can be particularly transformative during times when life feels stagnant or overwhelming, offering a way to address problems at their root, rather than simply managing their symptoms. Carl Jung believed that the path to self-realization or individuation requires us to embrace all parts of ourselves, including the shadow. The introduction discusses how shadow work allows us to do this by uncovering the unconscious motivations behind our actions and providing the clarity needed to overcome internal conflict. It's a process of self-discovery that can lead to healing and empowerment. The introduction highlights that we often seek external solutions to problems that are rooted within. Whether it's career struggles, relationship issues, or feelings of inadequacy, the answers lie in addressing the unconscious patterns driving our lives. Shadow work shifts the focus inward, helping us navigate these challenges with honesty and courage. The introduction relates shadow work to feelings of being stuck or unfulfilled. When nothing in life seems to be working, it's often because unresolved emotional wounds or suppressed traits are blocking our growth. Shadow work provides a way to uncover these barriers and work through them, creating space for genuine transformation. Through shadow work, we learn to accept and integrate the darker aspects of ourselves rather than denying or avoiding them. The introduction explains that this integration leads to a sense of wholeness and authenticity. It's not about becoming perfect, but about becoming complete by embracing all facets of who we are. The introduction also describes shadow work as a tool for breaking free from recurring negative patterns in our lives. These patterns often arise from unresolved parts of our shadow self, and by confronting them, we can create new and healthier ways of living. Shadow work is framed as a process of liberation and growth. In discussing the origins of shadow work, the introduction explains that the shadow is shaped by societal expectations, personal experiences, and cultural norms. These influences push certain traits or desires into the unconscious, but shadow work helps us reclaim these aspects and integrate them into a more balanced sense of self. The introduction portrays shadow work as a pathway to deeper self-awareness and fulfillment. By turning inward and addressing the parts of ourselves we typically avoid, we can unlock hidden strengths and discover new possibilities for growth. It's a practice that not only heals but also empowers. Finally, the introduction concludes by emphasizing that shadow work is a journey toward wholeness. It's a way of reconnecting with the parts of ourselves we've lost or hidden, transforming inner conflict into a source of strength and clarity. When life feels overwhelming or stagnant, shadow work offers a way forward, a path to greater understanding and personal freedom. Chapter 1. The Shadow Self. This chapter introduces the shadow self as a central concept in Carl Jung's theories. It describes the shadow as a repository of traits, emotions, desires, and instincts we repress or deny because they conflict with our conscious self-image. Society, culture, and upbringing play significant roles in shaping what we deem acceptable, forcing certain behaviors, fears, and even ambitions into the unconscious. While we might believe we have rid ourselves of these elements, the chapter explains how the shadow continues to exert influence over our thoughts, decisions, and relationships in ways we don't always recognize. For example, suppressed anger might manifest as passive aggressiveness, or hidden insecurities might create jealousy or fear of failure. The chapter highlights that the shadow is not solely negative. It also contains untapped potential, creativity, and strengths we fail to acknowledge. It stresses the importance of shadow work as the process of identifying, confronting, and integrating these hidden parts to achieve self-awareness and balance. Without addressing the shadow, unresolved aspects of our psyche can create inner conflicts, lead to self-sabotage, and perpetuate negative patterns. By bringing the shadow into conscious awareness, we not only heal these wounds, but also reclaim parts of ourselves we've lost, becoming more whole and authentic. The chapter sets the foundation for the book, emphasizing that understanding the shadow is the first step in the transformative journey of shadow work. Chapter 1 explores the concept of the shadow self as the unconscious aspects of our psyche that we suppress due to fear, shame, or societal rejection. These elements, such as unwanted emotions, impulses, or traits, are not destroyed, but hidden deep within, often dictating behaviors we don't fully understand. For instance, the chapter provides examples of how a suppressed fear of inadequacy that leads to perfectionism, or how repressed desires can show up as irrational envy or resentment. It stresses that this hidden side, though often seen as a source of darkness, also contains repressed creativity, strength, and potential waiting to be unlocked. The chapter explains how ignoring the shadow can lead to a fragmented sense of self and unresolved emotional conflicts. Shadow work is presented as a means of facing these parts without judgment, helping to integrate them into our conscious identity. By confronting the shadow, we gain insight into our motivations and can transform unconscious habits into deliberate choices, setting the stage for personal growth and self-discovery. This chapter provides an in-depth look at the shadow self, which Jung described as the hidden part of our psyche made up of thoughts, emotions, and traits we suppress to maintain our desired self-image. It explores how societal expectations, cultural values, and personal experiences shape what we accept about ourselves and what we hide away. The chapter explains that these repressed parts don't vanish, but instead influence our actions and emotional responses in ways we may not realize. For example, unresolved anger might cause outbursts in unrelated situations, or unacknowledged talents might manifest as envy toward others who embody those traits. The shadow is depicted not as an inherently negative force, but as a collection of hidden truths that can be both destructive and empowering. The chapter highlights that by engaging with the shadow through reflection and openness, we can reclaim parts of ourselves we've lost, confront long-standing patterns, and achieve a more authentic and integrated sense of self. This sets the stage for the book's exploration of shadow work as a path to healing and growth. Chapter 1 focuses on the shadow self, explaining it as the unconscious repository of traits, desires, and fears that society, culture, or personal judgment have deemed unacceptable. These hidden elements, while out of sight, actively influence our behaviors and relationships, often in ways that feel inexplicable. The chapter uses relatable examples, such as how suppressed ambition can manifest as frustration with others' success, or how hidden fears can cause irrational anxieties. It discusses how the shadow is not only a source of inner conflict, but also a treasure trove of untapped potential, containing the creative and emotional resources we need for personal growth. By ignoring the shadow, we risk being controlled by these unconscious forces, leading to recurring negative patterns and a disconnection from our authentic selves. Shadow work, as introduced in this chapter, is a process of self-exploration and integration that brings these hidden aspects into conscious awareness. By doing so, we can heal past wounds, embrace our wholeness, and create a more balanced and intentional life. The first chapter of the book introduces the shadow self as the part of our unconscious mind that houses all the traits and desires we suppress or reject. Drawing from Carl Jung's theories, it explains that this shadow forms through childhood experiences, societal expectations, and personal conditioning, which teach us to hide aspects of ourselves deemed undesirable. However, these suppressed parts don't disappear. Instead, they influence our actions, emotions, and relationships in ways we might not understand. The chapter emphasizes that the shadow is not inherently bad, it also contains valuable strengths, passions, and potential we've neglected. By ignoring our shadow, we risk perpetuating unresolved inner conflicts and destructive patterns. Through shadow work, we can confront these hidden aspects without judgment, understand their origins, and integrate them into our conscious identity. This integration leads us to a more balanced and authentic self, laying the groundwork for the transformative process explored throughout the book. The shadow self, as introduced in Chapter 1, is described as the hidden part of our psyche, where we store all the traits, desires, and emotions that we deny or suppress. Carl Jung theorized that this shadow forms because we strive to conform to societal norms, cultural values, and personal expectations, rejecting parts of ourselves that don't align with our ideal self-image. This chapter explains that while these parts are hidden in the unconscious, they continue to influence our actions, often in ways that create inner conflict or external challenges. For instance, unacknowledged feelings of guilt or fear may manifest as procrastination or avoidance. The shadow is not entirely negative, as it also contains forgotten strengths and potential that can lead to personal empowerment when reclaimed. The chapter introduces shadow work as a process of self-examination and healing, where we learn to accept and integrate these hidden parts. This journey, it argues, is essential for achieving self-awareness, emotional balance, and authentic living. Chapter 1 introduces the shadow self as a key element of Carl Jung's psychological theories, describing it as the unconscious aspect of our psyche that holds the parts of ourselves we suppress due to societal conditioning or personal fears. These hidden elements, though buried, shape our perceptions, reactions, and choices in life. The chapter illustrates how unresolved issues within the shadow can lead to recurring patterns of frustration, self-sabotage, or emotional pain. For example, suppressed anger might erupt in unexpected ways, or ignored ambitions might turn into resentment. The chapter emphasizes that the shadow is not solely negative. It is also a source of creativity, strength, and wisdom waiting to be uncovered. Shadow work, as described in this chapter, is the process of shining a light on these hidden aspects, understanding their roots, and integrating them into our conscious identity. This process allows us to heal, grow, and reclaim a fuller, more authentic version of ourselves. Chapter 2: Origins of Shadow Work. This chapter traces the origins of shadow work to Carl Jung's groundbreaking psychological theories, emphasizing how his work transformed our understanding of the unconscious mind. The chapter begins by explaining that Jung identified the shadow as the part of the psyche containing traits, emotions, and desires repressed due to societal norms, cultural influences, and personal experiences. This repression starts in childhood, as we learn to conform to acceptable standards, pushing unwanted aspects into the unconscious. Jung argued that this separation creates an inner division, leading to conflicts and unconscious behaviors. The chapter explores how Jung's ideas were inspired by ancient wisdom traditions, such as alchemy, mythology, and Eastern philosophies, which often address the duality of human nature. It discusses the archetype of the shadow in myths and literature, where characters must confront their inner darkness to achieve transformation and redemption. Jung built on these traditions by framing the shadow as essential to psychological growth, advocating for its integration through the process of individuation. This chapter also delves into Jung's revolutionary methods, such as active imagination and dream analysis, which he used to help individuals uncover and engage with their shadow. Furthermore, it connects shadow work to modern therapeutic approaches, showing how psychologists and therapists have adapted Jung's concepts to foster self-awareness, heal emotional wounds, and break destructive patterns. The chapter emphasizes that shadow work is not just a psychological tool, but a timeless practice rooted in the universal human quest for self-understanding and wholeness. In Chapter 2, the book examines the historical and philosophical roots of shadow work, beginning with Carl Jung's theories about the unconscious mind and its role in shaping human behavior. Jung defined the shadow as the hidden repository of traits and desires that individuals suppress due to societal pressures or personal fears, leading to the creation of an unconscious other within us. The chapter explains how Jung's work was influenced by earlier traditions, including alchemy, which symbolically represented the transformation of the self, and mythology, where heroes confront their inner darkness. The shadow is presented as a recurring theme in human storytelling, symbolizing the universal struggle with the unseen parts of ourselves. Jung formalized these ideas into a psychological framework, asserting that integrating the shadow is a critical step in the individuation process, the journey toward becoming a complete and authentic person. The chapter also highlights how Jung introduced methods like dream analysis and symbolic interpretation to uncover the shadow, bringing it into conscious awareness. It explores how these methods have evolved, forming the foundation of modern shadow work practices used in therapy and self-help. By understanding the origins of shadow work, readers are shown its deep roots in both psychology and human history, illustrating its timeless relevance for personal transformation. This chapter delves into the foundational ideas behind shadow work, beginning with Carl Jung's identification of the shadow as a critical component of the human psyche. Jung observed that society and culture shape what is deemed acceptable, leading individuals to suppress traits and emotions that don't align with societal expectations. These repressed parts form the shadow, which resides in the unconscious, but continues to influence thoughts, behaviors, and relationships. The chapter explores how Jung was inspired by ancient wisdom traditions, particularly those in alchemy and mythology, which often depicted the confrontation with darkness as a path to enlightenment. Myths from various cultures are discussed as allegories for shadow integration, such as the hero's journey and the battle with inner demons. Jung's revolutionary approach involved acknowledging these influences while creating a modern psychological framework for understanding the shadow. The chapter also explores how Jung's focus on dreams, symbols, and archetypes provided tools for accessing the shadow and integrating it into conscious awareness. Modern applications of these ideas in psychotherapy and personal development are discussed, demonstrating how shadow work continues to help individuals confront repressed parts of themselves, heal emotional wounds, and achieve greater self-awareness. By connecting these ideas to their historical roots, the chapter provides a comprehensive overview of shadow work as a universal and transformative practice. Chapter 2 takes readers through the rich history of shadow work, emphasizing Carl Jung's pivotal role in developing the concept and its relevance today. The shadow, as defined by Jung, represents the aspects of our personality that we repress due to external pressures or internal judgments, often beginning in childhood. The chapter explores how Jung drew inspiration from diverse sources, including ancient alchemical texts, religious symbols, and mythology, to frame the shadow as a central archetype in human psychology. Myths from different cultures are examined, highlighting how they reflect the human struggle with hidden desires and fears. Jung expanded on these ideas by creating a structured method for engaging with the shadow, emphasizing that integration is essential for achieving individuation, the process of becoming a whole and authentic self. The chapter describes how Jung used dream analysis, active imagination, and symbolic exploration to uncover the shadow's influence on the unconscious mind. It also discusses how contemporary psychologists and self-help practitioners have adapted these techniques to guide individuals in recognizing and integrating their shadow, fostering personal growth and emotional healing. By linking shadow work to historical and cultural traditions, the chapter demonstrates its enduring significance as a tool for self-discovery and transformation. The second chapter delves into the conceptual and historical development of shadow work, beginning with Carl Jung's identification of the shadow as an unconscious reservoir of traits and emotions we reject due to societal and personal conditioning. It explains how Jung viewed the shadow as not only the repository of suppressed negativity, but also a source of untapped potential, creativity, and insight. The chapter discusses how Jung's theories were deeply influenced by ancient practices such as alchemy, which symbolized the transformation of base elements into gold as a metaphor for psychological integration. Additionally, myths and folklore from various cultures are analyzed to show how the idea of confronting inner darkness is a timeless theme in human storytelling. Jung's innovative methods, including dream analysis and active imagination, are explored as tools to access the shadow and bring it into conscious awareness. The chapter also highlights how modern therapists and coaches have built on Jung's framework, incorporating shadow work into techniques for emotional healing, self-awareness, and overcoming inner conflict. By uncovering the origins of shadow work, readers are introduced to its profound depth and universal application as a means of understanding and integrating the hidden parts of the self. Chapter 3. Signs you need shadow work. This chapter takes an in-depth look at the specific signs that suggest the need for shadow work, illustrating how the shadow manifests in everyday life in subtle and sometimes overwhelming ways. The chapter explores recurring negative patterns, such as continuously falling into toxic relationships or experiencing self-sabotage in various forms, which are often tied to deep-seated fears and repressed emotions. The author explains that these patterns, though seemingly random or unrelated, are often symptoms of the shadow self expressing itself through behaviors that are out of conscious control. For instance, someone who repeatedly enters emotionally draining relationships might be unconsciously drawn to dynamics that mirror unresolved conflicts from childhood or past trauma. The chapter emphasizes how these patterns repeat over time, because the shadow seeks acknowledgement, trying to bring unconscious issues to light in a way that may initially seem disruptive or uncomfortable. The book also discusses how feelings of inadequacy, shame, guilt, or a sense of unworthiness that appear disproportionately in certain situations are major red flags for shadow work. For example, an individual may feel extreme shame or anger when they make a minor mistake at work, even though their reaction seems out of proportion to the event. These emotions, while not always consciously understood, are often rooted in the unconscious rejection of certain traits or experiences that the person is unable to accept within themselves. The chapter emphasizes that these emotional responses, though painful, are signals from the unconscious, pointing to deeper unresolved issues that require attention. These suppressed feelings may stem from earlier life experiences, societal pressures, or internalized negative beliefs that the individual has not yet processed or integrated into their conscious identity. In addition to emotional and behavioral signs, the chapter explores projection as a key mechanism through which the shadow influences our interactions with others. Projection occurs when individuals attribute their own repressed qualities or insecurities onto other people, often without realizing it. For example, someone who is deeply afraid of failure may project this fear onto others, perceiving them as overly critical or judgmental when, in fact, it is their own self-doubt they are seeing reflected. This projection can lead to unnecessary conflict in relationships, as it distorts reality and creates tension based on misperceptions. The chapter explains that recognizing projection is essential for shadow work, as it helps individuals uncover and accept parts of themselves they have been avoiding or rejecting. By confronting these projections, individuals can begin to integrate their shadow and break free from the patterns of conflict that arise from them. The chapter also provides insight into how perfectionism and an obsessive need for control are often signs of an unacknowledged shadow. These traits arise from the fear of failure, rejection, or not measuring up to external standards. The book explains that individuals who are perfectionistic often believe that if they achieve flawlessness, they can avoid judgment and gain acceptance. But in reality, this behavior is a defense mechanism designed to shield them from feelings of inadequacy and vulnerability. The chapter elaborates on how perfectionism is not only exhausting, but also an obstacle to self-compassion and personal growth. Similarly, The need for control is shown to stem from a fear of uncertainty or the inability to accept vulnerability, both of which are often associated with shadow elements that the individual feels they must suppress or manage. Physical symptoms, including chronic stress, fatigue, and unexplained health issues, are another significant manifestation of the shadow, according to the chapter. These physical manifestations are often a direct response to emotional repression and the ongoing internal conflict between the conscious mind and the unconscious self. The text explains how unresolved emotions, such as repressed anger, fear, or sadness create tension in the body, leading to stress, headaches, muscle pain, and even conditions like insomnia or digestive problems. The chapter emphasizes the mind-body connection, noting that the suppression of emotions and the avoidance of shadow work can cause prolonged stress, weakening the immune system and triggering physical ailments. These symptoms are not just signs of external pressures, but are also indicative of the emotional burden carried by the unconscious, urging the individual to address unresolved inner conflicts. Another significant sign discussed in the chapter is the feeling of being stuck in life, where an individual feels trapped in a cycle of unfulfilled goals or aspirations, despite their best efforts. This stagnation is often caused by internal resistance or unresolved psychological issues that prevent the person from moving forward. The chapter explains that this feeling of being stuck is closely linked to the unconscious resistance to confronting uncomfortable truths about oneself. For example, someone who is afraid of success may subconsciously avoid pursuing opportunities that could lead to personal growth, as they fear the responsibility or expectations that come with achievement. This unconscious fear, rooted in the shadow, can hold the person back from embracing change or taking necessary risks. The chapter stresses that recognizing the feeling of being stuck as a sign of unresolved shadow material is crucial for overcoming this stagnation and finding the courage to move forward. The chapter goes on to explain how certain recurring dreams or intrusive thoughts may be signs that the shadow is trying to get the individual's attention. For instance, a person might consistently dream of being chased or falling, which are common symbols of fear or avoidance. These types of dreams often represent repressed emotions or fears that the person is not yet willing to confront. The chapter also explores how symbolic imagery in dreams, such as being trapped in a dark space or encountering frightening creatures, can point to shadow material that needs to be integrated into consciousness. The book suggests keeping a dream journal or reflecting on recurring dream themes as a way to identify the areas of life where shadow work may be needed. By exploring these dreams and the emotions they evoke, individuals can begin to understand the deeper meanings behind them and address the fears or unresolved issues they represent. The societal and cultural context in which the individual was raised also plays a significant role in shaping the shadow, as discussed in the chapter. The text explains how societal norms and expectations often dictate what is acceptable, and in doing so, force individuals to suppress certain parts of themselves. For example, a person raised in a culture that values toughness and emotional restraint may suppress their vulnerability, empathy, or need for emotional connection. Over time, these suppressed qualities become part of the shadow, leading to emotional detachment, difficulty in forming deep relationships, or an inability to express emotions openly. The chapter highlights that cultural conditioning often reinforces the repression of the shadow, making it harder for individuals to acknowledge and integrate the aspects of themselves that do not fit societal ideals. This creates a disconnection between the person's authentic self and the identity they present to the world, which can lead to feelings of alienation, loneliness, or a lack of fulfillment. Finally, the chapter concludes by emphasizing that recognizing these signs is the first step toward healing and personal growth. The text explains that shadow work is not about eliminating the shadow, but rather understanding, accepting, and integrating it into the conscious self. It stresses that acknowledging the shadow allows individuals to break free from the negative patterns and behaviors that stem from unresolved conflicts, leading to greater emotional balance and authenticity. The chapter encourages readers to view these signs not as flaws, but as opportunities for transformation, offering a path toward wholeness and inner peace. By beginning the process of shadow work, individuals can move beyond the limitations of their unconscious fears and repressed emotions, ultimately achieving a more fulfilling and integrated life. Chapter 4: Tools and Techniques for Shadow Work. This chapter provides an extensive exploration of the tools and techniques essential for effectively engaging in shadow work, offering both simple and profound methods to help individuals connect with their unconscious and integrate the aspects of the self that have been repressed. The chapter begins with journaling, which is emphasized as one of the most accessible and transformative tools for shadow work. It encourages individuals to write regularly about their emotions, thoughts, and experiences without censoring themselves, as this can bring awareness to hidden aspects of the psyche. Through journaling, people can track recurring themes, patterns, or behaviors they might not have previously noticed, and through this process, the shadow begins to reveal itself. Writing is also described as a means of creating a dialogue with the unconscious, where the act of putting thoughts on paper can provide clarity and insight into one's fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts. The chapter recommends specific prompts to guide this process, such as what do I avoid thinking about, or what are the qualities in others that trigger a strong emotional reaction in me. These kinds of questions help uncover areas where the shadow has been kept in the dark, waiting to be acknowledged. Mindfulness and meditation are highlighted as crucial practices for building self-awareness and learning to witness the thoughts and emotions that arise without judgment or attachment. The chapter explains that mindfulness helps individuals create a distance between themselves and their automatic reactions, allowing them to observe negative or uncomfortable feelings without being controlled by them. Through regular practice, individuals can become more aware of their inner world, recognizing when shadow aspects are being triggered in their daily interactions or emotions. Meditation is described as an opportunity to sit with the shadow in a non-reactive state, allowing unconscious material to surface naturally, without resistance. This process can lead to a deeper understanding of the internal conflicts that shape one's behaviors and attitudes. The chapter suggests that both mindfulness and meditation allow individuals to build a compassionate relationship with themselves, reducing the tendency to repress or deny painful feelings and experiences. Another technique discussed is deep self-reflection, where individuals are encouraged to ask themselves probing questions to uncover shadow material. These questions are intended to challenge the individual's ego and encourage them to confront the parts of themselves they may be avoiding. For example, the chapter suggests asking questions like what parts of me am I ashamed of? Or what traits in others irritate me the most? And what might that say about me? The author emphasizes that these questions should be asked without rushing to dismiss or justify one's answers. They are designed to help individuals identify patterns in their thoughts and actions that are often unconscious, such as judgment or projection, and recognize how these patterns are often linked to repressed aspects of the self. The chapter stresses that self-reflection is an ongoing process and should not be rushed, as uncovering the shadow takes time and patience. The chapter also delves into dream analysis as an important tool for shadow work, explaining that dreams are a direct channel to the unconscious mind. It discusses how symbols, scenarios, and emotions that appear in dreams often point to unresolved psychological material that the conscious mind is not yet ready to confront. By analyzing recurring dreams or vivid imagery, individuals can gain insight into their deepest fears, desires, and hidden emotions. The chapter explains how paying attention to dream symbols, such as falling, being chased, or encountering unknown figures, can reveal aspects of the self that need attention. The book suggests keeping a dream journal to record dreams and explore their meanings, noting that as patterns emerge, one can begin to understand the deeper messages from the unconscious mind. Dream analysis is presented as a way of making the unconscious conscious, allowing individuals to integrate the shadow through awareness and understanding. Visualization techniques are introduced as another valuable tool for shadow work. The chapter explains that visualization allows individuals to imagine themselves in a safe and controlled space where they can confront their shadow directly. This practice involves vividly imagining a scenario where the person meets their shadow self, whether in the form of a specific image, a figure, or an abstract concept. The chapter offers examples, such as imagining oneself standing face-to-face with their shadow, exchanging dialogue, or expressing emotions in a safe, supportive environment. Through these exercises, individuals can develop a sense of compassion and acceptance for the parts of themselves they have rejected or ignored. Visualization is also described as a way to symbolically integrate the shadow, by taking small steps to embrace those repressed aspects in a conscious and deliberate manner. This method can help individuals address specific fears, desires, or emotional wounds that are tied to the shadow. Therapy and counseling are discussed as powerful tools for shadow work, particularly for individuals dealing with deep-seated issues or trauma that require professional guidance. The chapter explains that working with a therapist provides a safe and structured environment for exploring unconscious material that may be too overwhelming to confront alone. Professional therapists trained in Jungian psychology, Gestalt therapy, or other modalities that focus on the unconscious can help individuals navigate complex shadow material, offering insights and support for emotional healing. The chapter underscores that therapy provides a space for individuals to engage with their shadow in a supportive, non-judgmental setting, which can be especially important for those who struggle with intense emotions or past trauma. The author also notes that therapy helps individuals gain a greater understanding of the root causes of their unconscious behaviors and reactions, allowing them to break free from harmful patterns. Active imagination is introduced as a creative and dynamic tool for shadow work. This practice involves engaging with the unconscious through artistic expression, such as drawing, painting, writing, or role-playing. The chapter explains that active imagination allows individuals to engage in a dialogue with their unconscious mind, creating an interactive process where the shadow is personified and brought into the light. For example, someone might draw their shadow self, write a letter to their unconscious, or create a dialogue between different parts of themselves. This technique allows individuals to externalize their internal world, giving voice to emotions, fears, and desires that may have previously been ignored. Active imagination is presented as a way to integrate the shadow by making it tangible, allowing the individual to confront it directly and transform it through creative expression. Another technique mentioned is using body work to access the shadow. The chapter explores how the body holds onto repressed emotions and memories, and how techniques such as yoga, dance, or other forms of somatic movement can help release these emotions. The author explains that by paying attention to physical sensations and areas of tension in the body, individuals can begin to identify where emotions are stored and work through them. This body-centered approach complements other shadow work practices by helping to release trapped emotions that may not be fully accessible through cognitive methods alone. The chapter suggests that listening to the body's messages and allowing movement to release pent-up emotions can facilitate emotional healing and integration of the shadow. The chapter concludes by emphasizing the importance of consistent practice in shadow work, noting that it is not a one-time fix, but a lifelong journey. It stresses that integrating the shadow is an ongoing process that requires patience, compassion, and commitment. The chapter encourages readers to experiment with the techniques discussed and find what works best for them, highlighting that the more an individual engages with their shadow, the more they will experience emotional growth, healing, and personal transformation. By incorporating these tools into daily life, individuals can gradually dismantle the barriers created by the shadow and cultivate a more authentic and integrated self. Chapter 5: Challenges and Breakthroughs. This chapter addresses the complex and often challenging journey individuals face when engaging in shadow work, detailing both the difficulties that arise and the profound breakthroughs that come from persevering through them. One of the major challenges discussed in the chapter is the emotional resistance to self-acceptance. Many people find it difficult to confront the parts of themselves that they consider flaws or weaknesses, as they may have internalized societal or familial expectations of perfection. This resistance often stems from a deep-seated fear that acknowledging negative traits would lead to a loss of self-worth, rejection by others, or a feeling of inadequacy. Shadow work, by definition, asks individuals to embrace their full selves, including the less than ideal aspects, which can initially feel like an overwhelming and intimidating task. However, the chapter points out that this fear is a natural part of the process, and while it may be hard to face, it's an essential step towards healing and self-awareness. The chapter also explores how emotions such as shame, guilt, and anger often arise when shadow work begins, especially when individuals are forced to confront behaviors, thoughts, or memories that they have suppressed or denied for years. These emotions can trigger defensive reactions, such as projecting blame onto others or avoiding introspection altogether. It's common for people to feel a strong impulse to deny the truth about themselves, especially when that truth contradicts the image they have of themselves or the version of themselves they present to the world. When the shadow is activated in this way, it may cause an individual to become highly reactive, overcompensating for their perceived flaws or attempting to repress certain emotions altogether. The chapter emphasizes that these moments of resistance are normal and should not be viewed as failures, but as part of the unfolding process of shadow work. The key is to approach these emotional challenges with a sense of compassion and curiosity, understanding that they offer valuable insights into the parts of the self that need healing and integration. Another significant challenge highlighted in the chapter is the discomfort that comes with change. Shadow work often requires individuals to question deeply held beliefs, confront unresolved emotional wounds, and re-examine patterns in their relationships or behaviors that have been deeply ingrained over time. This process can feel destabilizing, as it calls into question one's entire sense of identity and purpose. Many individuals may resist change out of fear of losing their sense of self, or because they feel that their previous ways of being, despite their dysfunctions, have provided them with a sense of security or control. The chapter illustrates that shadow work is a journey that requires not only self-awareness, but also courage, as the process of confronting the shadow often leads to feelings of vulnerability and uncertainty. However, the chapter emphasizes that change is inevitable and essential for growth. By resisting change, individuals only prolong their suffering and limit their potential for transformation. In discussing breakthroughs, the chapter presents the idea that breakthroughs in shadow work don't always manifest as grand, life-changing moments. Often, they appear as small, incremental shifts in perspective or behavior, which, over time, compound into profound transformations. One of the most significant breakthroughs mentioned is an increased sense of self-awareness and self-compassion. Through shadow work, individuals often become more attuned to their inner world, recognizing when their shadows are activated and learning how to respond to them in healthier, more balanced ways. These small victories, such as acknowledging a pattern of self-sabotage or noticing when judgmental thoughts arise, can be powerful indicators of progress in the journey of self-integration. The chapter explains that shadow work is not about perfection, but about embracing growth, and even small moments of self-awareness can be seen as breakthroughs that lead to more authentic living. Furthermore, the chapter discusses how breakthroughs in shadow work can also manifest as healing in relationships. As individuals confront and integrate their shadow, they begin to recognize the ways in which their unresolved issues, repressed emotions, and unconscious projections have impacted their interactions with others. For example, someone might notice that they have repeatedly attracted partners who reflect unresolved abandonment issues, or that they tend to react defensively in conflicts because of their fear of being rejected. By acknowledging these patterns and integrating the shadow, individuals can break free from unhealthy relationship dynamics and cultivate deeper, more authentic connections. The chapter underscores that healing through shadow work is not just about self-empowerment, but also about improving one's interactions with others by releasing old patterns and embracing new, healthier ways of relating. The chapter also highlights the emotional freedom and inner peace that can result from successfully working through the shadow. One of the key breakthroughs of shadow work is a sense of emotional liberation, as individuals no longer feel controlled by unconscious fears, anxieties, or repressed desires. By recognizing and owning the parts of themselves that have been buried or denied, people can begin to release the emotional burdens they have carried for years. This liberation allows for a deeper sense of peace and contentment, as individuals are no longer weighed down by unresolved issues that drain their energy. The chapter explains that achieving this emotional freedom often leads to increased self-esteem, as individuals no longer feel ashamed of their past mistakes or imperfections. Instead, they come to embrace their full selves, including the aspects they once found difficult to accept. The chapter also discusses how breakthroughs often lead to a deeper connection with one's purpose in life. Through shadow work, individuals may begin to uncover their true passions, desires, and values, which had previously been hidden beneath layers of fear or societal conditioning. By engaging with the unconscious, individuals can gain clarity on what truly matters to them, free from external influences or expectations. This newfound clarity often results in a more purposeful and fulfilling life, as people begin to align their actions and decisions with their authentic selves. The chapter notes that this alignment is a powerful form of empowerment, as individuals no longer feel conflicted or torn between their true desires and external pressures. As the chapter continues, it further emphasizes that shadow work is not a linear process, and breakthroughs can come at unexpected moments. These moments of growth might occur during quiet reflection, after a period of emotional turmoil, or even after seemingly unrelated events. The chapter encourages readers to remain patient and trust the process, recognizing that transformation often occurs gradually, with subtle shifts that lead to more significant changes over time. By acknowledging these small breakthroughs, individuals can stay motivated and encouraged, knowing that they are on the right path. The chapter also touches on the role of patience in shadow work. Shadow work is described as a lifelong journey, and while breakthroughs are important, they are not the end goal. The chapter stresses that the real reward of shadow work is not just the breakthroughs themselves, but the deeper sense of integration and wholeness that comes from continually engaging with the shadow. By viewing shadow work as an ongoing process rather than a destination, individuals can avoid feeling frustrated or disheartened by the challenges they face. Instead, they can approach each step of the journey with a sense of gratitude, knowing that every challenge is an opportunity for growth. Finally, the chapter concludes by reiterating the importance of embracing both the challenges and breakthroughs of shadow work. It encourages readers to approach the process with an open heart and mind, recognizing that shadow work is a deeply personal and transformative experience. By embracing the discomfort and uncertainty that comes with confronting the shadow, individuals can unlock the potential for deep healing, self-love, and personal empowerment. Through consistent engagement with the shadow, individuals can break free from old patterns, heal emotional wounds, and cultivate a more integrated and authentic life. Chapter 6. Integrating the shadow. This chapter focuses extensively on the crucial and difficult process of integrating the shadow. Integration involves more than simply acknowledging the parts of yourself that you have repressed or denied. It is about fully accepting and embracing them as integral aspects of your whole being. The chapter explains that shadow integration is a process that requires an individual to face the darker parts of their personality, such as their fears, insecurities, and negative emotions, which may have been suppressed due to social norms, personal experiences, or trauma. These repressed aspects are often pushed to the unconscious mind because they are seen as undesirable or unworthy, and therefore not part of the ideal self-image. However, the chapter highlights that integrating the shadow does not mean eliminating these traits, but instead learning to accept and understand them, recognizing their role in shaping who you are. This process requires both self-awareness and courage, as the shadow aspects can be uncomfortable and may trigger intense emotional responses, such as shame, guilt, or anger. The chapter stresses that these reactions are normal and part of the healing journey, and through self-compassion, you can begin to work with these feelings rather than be controlled by them. The chapter also explains that shadow integration is not about perfection. It's about acknowledging the totality of who you are. Integrating the shadow, accepting both the light and the dark sides of your personality. Many people tend to identify only with their positive traits, ignoring or rejecting the darker aspects they perceive as flaws or weaknesses. This tendency to focus on the good parts of oneself often leads to internal conflict, where parts of the self remain hidden, causing dissonance and emotional imbalance. Shadow integration is the antidote to this inner fragmentation. The chapter emphasizes that when you allow yourself to embrace your negative traits and stop labeling them as shameful or wrong, you open the door to a deeper, more compassionate understanding of yourself. Through this process, you begin to let go of the idea of being perfect, and instead embrace the notion of being a complete, whole person, which brings a sense of peace and acceptance. Further, the chapter elaborates on how integrating the shadow leads to greater emotional intelligence. As you begin to recognize and accept the shadow aspects within you, you also become more aware of your emotional triggers, reactions, and patterns of behavior. This awareness is essential because it allows you to break free from unconscious habits that have been influencing your actions for years. For example, someone who has repressed feelings of anger may unconsciously lash out in situations that trigger those emotions, often inappropriately. By integrating the shadow, you are no longer dominated by these unconscious responses. Instead, you can process and express them in healthier, more constructive ways. The chapter emphasizes that this emotional awareness allows individuals to make better decisions and respond more consciously in their relationships, both with others and with themselves. It helps prevent unnecessary conflicts and enables a more balanced, thoughtful way of engaging with the world. The chapter also explains that shadow integration involves understanding the underlying motivations behind your behaviors and actions. Many behaviors that people consider negative or undesirable, such as defensiveness, jealousy, or fear, are often the result of unmet needs or unresolved issues from the past. By integrating the shadow, individuals can begin to identify the root causes of these behaviors, rather than merely addressing the surface symptoms. For instance, someone who consistently feels jealous in relationships may come to understand that their jealousy stems from a fear of abandonment or a lack of self-worth. By addressing these underlying fears and beliefs, individuals can transform their reactions and find healthier ways of coping with their insecurities. The chapter underscores that shadow integration allows you to heal not just the behaviors, but also the emotional wounds that drive them, leading to a more balanced and harmonious emotional life. In addition to emotional intelligence, the chapter discusses how shadow integration impacts relationships. Often, the traits we project onto others or reject in ourselves are actually reflections of our own unacknowledged shadows. For example, if someone consistently criticizes others for being too controlling, it may be because they themselves have repressed a desire for control or feel powerless. By integrating the shadow, individuals are less likely to project their inner conflicts onto others and can instead relate to them from a place of empathy and understanding. This shift in perspective can dramatically improve relationships, as people are no longer reacting from unconscious patterns, but engaging from a place of self-awareness. The chapter emphasizes that shadow integration helps people build more authentic, deeper connections with others, as they are no longer hiding behind false masks or defensive postures. Instead, they are able to communicate more openly and accept others for who they truly are, just as they accept themselves. The chapter also highlights how shadow integration leads to a greater sense of personal empowerment. As individuals embrace the entirety of their being, they begin to feel more confident and less afraid of judgment. By owning their darker aspects, people can stop hiding behind masks of perfection or idealized images of themselves and become more authentic. This authenticity leads to empowerment because individuals are no longer beholden to societal expectations or fears of rejection. Instead, they can stand fully in their truth, knowing that they are complete and worthy just as they are. The chapter emphasizes that this empowerment is not about being perfect, but about being real, vulnerable, and comfortable with who you are, which can bring a profound sense of freedom. The chapter also emphasizes that integrating the shadow is an ongoing, dynamic process. It's not something that can be achieved in a single moment or through one intense period of self-reflection. Shadow integration is an evolving process that requires consistent self-awareness, self-compassion, and willingness to confront new aspects of the shadow as they arise. The chapter explains that as individuals grow and evolve, new layers of the shadow may surface, requiring ongoing work. This means that shadow integration is not a destination, but a continual journey. And with each layer integrated, individuals gain a deeper understanding of themselves. The chapter stresses that the process of shadow integration becomes easier over time as individuals develop a more compassionate and accepting attitude toward themselves, making it a more natural part of their personal growth. The chapter also discusses the role of mindfulness and meditation in shadow integration. These practices help individuals cultivate the awareness needed to observe their thoughts, feelings, and reactions without judgment. By practicing mindfulness, individuals can gain insight into their unconscious patterns and better understand the ways in which their shadows influence their behavior. Meditation can be particularly helpful in quieting the mind and creating the mental space necessary for deep introspection. The chapter explains that regular mindfulness practices provide a foundation for ongoing shadow integration, allowing individuals to stay grounded and present as they navigate the complex process of self-discovery and healing. Finally, the chapter emphasizes the importance of patience and persistence in the shadow integration process. The chapter acknowledges that confronting the shadow can be a challenging and uncomfortable experience, but it stresses that the rewards of integration far outweigh the initial discomfort. As individuals continue to integrate their shadow, they experience greater self-awareness, emotional freedom, and a stronger sense of self. By embracing this process with patience, individuals can move through the discomfort and come out on the other side more complete, authentic, and empowered. The chapter concludes by affirming that shadow integration is a lifelong journey that offers continuous opportunities for growth, healing, and personal transformation. Conclusion: this book ties together the key ideas discussed throughout the book, offering a final reflection on the importance and power of shadow work. The conclusion emphasizes that shadow work is not a one-time fix or a quick solution, but rather a lifelong journey of self-awareness and personal growth. It underscores that by acknowledging, accepting, and integrating the shadow aspects of ourselves, individuals can move toward a more authentic and balanced life. The conclusion stresses that the process of shadow integration is not about eliminating negative traits or becoming perfect, but about embracing the totality of who we are, both light and dark aspects, and recognizing that our shadow can offer valuable insights into our deeper motivations, desires, and fears. The conclusion also highlights the transformative potential of shadow work. It emphasizes that when we integrate the shadow, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves, which leads to increased emotional intelligence, healthier relationships, and a stronger sense of self. By recognizing our unconscious patterns and addressing the underlying causes of our behaviors, we can break free from cycles of self-sabotage and make more conscious choices. The conclusion reinforces that shadow work can lead to personal empowerment as individuals stop hiding behind masks and allow themselves to live in alignment with their true selves, free from the shame or guilt that may have previously governed their lives. In addition, the conclusion emphasizes the importance of self-compassion and patience throughout the shadow work process. It reminds readers that integrating the shadow is challenging and requires time, effort, and perseverance. The conclusion encourages individuals to approach shadow work with an open heart, understanding that the discomfort they may feel is part of the healing process and an opportunity for growth. It also acknowledges that shadow work is not a linear journey, and there will be ups and downs along the way, but the ultimate reward is a more fulfilled and authentic life. The final message of the book is one of hope and empowerment. It encourages readers to embrace the shadow as an essential part of their journey toward self-discovery and healing. By doing so, they can unlock their full potential, live more authentically, and create deeper, more meaningful connections with others. The conclusion affirms that shadow work, while challenging, is a powerful tool for personal transformation and can lead to a life of greater peace, happiness, and emotional freedom.